the middle school play,
Yeah, that's the 8th grade team that.
last weekend.
Yeah.
They were really good. They had some great games.
When they go
Just- If-
Yeah, so.
If I could announce, anybody who might be listening in, we are waiting for a fourth member to join us, so we'll have quorum, so just stand by. The meeting will begin soon.
We ready?
Yep.
Good evening. We'll go ahead and call to order this meeting of the Eastern Delaware County Joint Recreation District. Can you please get a roll call?
Ms. Greiger,
Here.
Mr. Musacchio,
Here.
Ms. Sabata,
Finally here, yes.
Ms. Watson,
Here.
Mr. Elliott is absent, Mr. Coy also absent. We have 4 members, we have a quorum.
All right, so the first item on the agenda is approval, or the minutes from last meeting. I had noted one correction under new business. It says Ms. Watson went over the conditions for board operations. I believe that was actually Mr. Ringel. Any further discussion? I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes with the change that we just discussed to Mr. Ringel to Ms. For Ms. Watson under new business. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Sabata,
Yes.
Mr. Musacchio,
Yes.
Mrs. Greiger.
Yes.
4 yeas, motion approved as amended.
All right, well, this evening we have a couple visitors here who will be providing a presentation to the board. And it is Gary Lynn and Tony Collins from the Central Ohio YMCA. Thank you so much for attending this evening and taking the time to come. The floor is yours.
You bet. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you, Vic, for being here today. We're excited to be here. We've been looking forward to this presentation and meeting the group, as well as being able to talk a little bit about the YMCA Central Ohio and how we could help support you as you consider going through a potential project all the way through a community center. Before I introduce Tony and let him introduce himself, We'll talk a little bit about the agenda today. So we tried to pair the agenda through the call that we had initially. I had a conversation with Daryl at one point, and as well as the individuals that toured Reynoldsburg and took the opportunity to ask questions, lots of those and stuff like that, and get a chance to tour and get us see what a potential partnership could look and feel like. We tried to take a lot of those questions and build them into the agenda today. So first part of the agenda, we'll talk a little bit about the YMCA of Central Ohio, the types of impact that we feel like we bring to the community when we go into the community and operate a community center. We'll talk a little bit about the existing partnerships that we have and how that type of impact plays out in each one of those partnerships. We'll talk about what our experiences are in these projects from all the way through all the phases, all the steps. From beginning a conversation like we're doing today, all the way through implementation and construction. And then we'll finish up with talking a little bit about a timeline or a tentative timeline that could be from next steps from today all the way through opening up a new facility. So with that, I'll let Tony come up and introduce himself and talk a little bit about his history with the Y and outside.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us today. Thanks for being part of the conversation. It's exciting to be here. Congratulations on the starting of your recreation district. I am been with the YMCA here as the CEO for the last 6 years. I've been in Central Ohio my whole life, but spent 20 years in the Parks and Rec business. So I've worked alongside some of your colleagues in the recreation districts and park districts and Parks and Rec departments around Central Ohio. Including, I was just thinking about our friends over at New Albany and the New Albany Recreation District. We had a chance to work with Dave for a number of years. So congratulations on the work and the move forward. It's awesome. It's awesome to see the growth in this region and also to see the work that you're doing to help meet the needs of your community. So looking forward to talking more about how the Y could potentially help and support that work and or be a partner in what you're trying to do. So I'll let Gary talk through the next steps, and then I think I can come back up and talk a little bit more.
Thank you. And then I introduce myself. My name is Gary Lynn. I serve in the role of COO for our YMCA. I've actually been with the Y for right at 24 years. I spent my first 21 plus years at a different Y in Kansas City, Missouri, and then had an opportunity to come out here in October of 22. So I've been here with this Y for the last 2.5 years. Tony and I are going to kind of tag team this thing, so I'm going to kick us off on the presentation. Some of you may not know this, our Y has actually been serving this community for the last 170 years. And obviously from generation to generation of that 170, how we serve the community has changed throughout each generation based on the community's needs. How we serve the generation today, though, our mission on how we serve this community hasn't changed though. Our mission is all about how we strengthen communities through the programs and services that we deliver to those communities. That's one of the things that haven't changed. Today, we serve it through 13 community centers throughout Central Ohio. We serve the community through about 80 licensed childcare sites, and then a plethora of social service programs that adapt and fit the need of the community that we would be in. Do I have the clicker for the slides?
I can advance it. Yep.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go.
Good. So a lot of times people ask us to define what the YMCA does. Sometimes we do so much that we overwhelm people when we try to explain why. So today we want to leave you with 5 elements that you can take away that we think represent the biggest impact that we make in communities when we go in and serve them. So you can go to the next slide. The first one is YMCA is a nationwide leader in terms of youth development. When people think about the YMCA, many times they think of our service to youth and children, right? And we're proud of that fact. We feel like we serve youth and children in incredible ways. But we're not just a nationwide leader. The YMCA of Central Ohio is also a regional leader in terms of youth development. We're the largest provider of childcare services in the region. And if you combine the work that we do with childcare, as well as our other youth programs, such as life safety skills, like learn to swim programs, character development, such as youth sports and summer day camp, Last year alone, we served over 44,000 youth in our youth development programs. You can go to the next slide. And if we bring that locally just to this community, even though we don't necessarily have a physical building in this community, we also feel like to some level, we're still serving this community. We've been a part of the Big Walnut School District since 2018, operating their school-age childcare. This past year, we served 208 kids through that program. And in the last 12 years, there's been 493 kids in your communities that have participated and enrolled in YMCA youth development programs. Next slide. When we operate community centers, a lot of times we get asked the question, what's your target market? And our response is families are our target market. And families come in all shapes and sizes. So when we train our teams, we train them to be able to serve and implement programs that affect and impact 5 generations every day, because those are the generations that are coming into our life. Today, as we sit here, we have 114,000 members throughout our across our 13 community centers. And of that 114,000, almost half of them are under the age of 18 or over the age of 60. So not only do we have a high volume of individuals that we're trying to serve, we also want to be laser focused on those that are the most at-risk population in terms of our youth and our seniors. And if you bring that locally here, again, even though we don't have a physical building here, today in your community, there are 107 individuals that are active members of your YMCA from your community today. Go to the next slide. The third area I want to talk about and have you take away is this idea around accessibility and ensuring that anybody that wants to be a part of our programs has the opportunity to do that. Actually, it's in our mission that anybody that chooses to be a part of our Y or part of our programs, we're going to find a way for them to be able to be a part of it. We do that through our teams going out and raising money regionally and locally, both public and private, to be able to subsidize those programs regardless of what economic condition they have. Last year, we raised $1.3 million to offer financial assistance for individuals, kids, and families to be able to participate in our program. And that's done through our local leaders. Go to the next slide. The other area we want to talk about is being beyond our walls, and the fact that a community center and the walls of a community center don't define the impact that the YMCA tries to do in that community. We're incredibly proud of how we operate community centers, but we're going to ask our leaders to get out of those 4 walls and be a part of the community, be a leader in the community, sit on the civic organizations that take place in that community to identify what are the gaps in services in that community, and then how can the Y help deliver some of those programs to fill those needs. An example of that is our Stable Families programs. Last year, we impacted over 1,000 families in our Stable Families program. What that program is we identify individuals that are at risk of being losing their home or being evicted from an apartment. Our staff goes into their homes, they work with them to generate income, to help them balance their budget. We work with them with job placement skills, and then we work with their children to help keep them on school level readiness, because we know that housing instability can be one of the biggest factors in poor school performance. That's one program. We have numerous other social service programs that we do, whether it be working with youth that are born with some type of mental or physical disability, whether it be working in senior outreach and being able to meet seniors where they're at, all the way through food programming and working with individuals that could be going hungry. And last slide. And then this last thing we want you to take away is this collaborative spirit about the YMCA. You're getting ready to hear about 4 other facility partnerships that we have. We also work with 14 school districts. It'll actually be 15 school districts as we have one later on this year. And then we have hundreds of other local partnerships that we do in each one of the communities, both with the nonprofit community organizations such as the American Heart Association, American Red Cross, and the for-profit organizations that we work with in terms of our volunteer strategies and our corporate wellness programs. We think that the Y is uniquely positioned to be a great collaborator and partner in the community because of that mission around strengthening the community. Isn't always done best when we just do it by ourselves. Right. And so we go into community knowing that we not only want to work with community residents, we also want to work with community organizations. So if you take nothing else away from this presentation today, we want you to think about the idea that we're a nationwide leader in youth development. We serve 5 generations every single day. We're committed to allowing access to individuals that want to be a part of our programs and services. We are going to be a great collaborator in the community, and then we're going to work beyond our walls to bring our impact even outside of the community center. So I'm going to turn it over to Tony and let him talk about some of our current partnerships.
So one of the things that when we first came to meet with folks from the community to talk about what could be, what is on the realm of possibility, we talked about some of the things that are happening already in Central Ohio. Remember when I was a Parks and Recreation Director in the city of Gahanna, we were a small community and we had a great park system, but we didn't have a lot of the recreation amenities. And in 2004, the Y came to our community and began operating in the city. And we right away started working to collaborate with the Y and how we could offer not just park services, but also a library of services to our community in terms of recreation for kids, families, and the neighborhoods that we serve. And I remember back then thinking about how the vision and the dream is this building, this complex with multiple locations, what I always used to say. Because at the end of the day, as a small community in Gahanna, we didn't have the resources that some communities like Dublin might have or New Albany. So we were looking for ways to collaborate with nonprofits, other public entities to be able to provide the best in class services to our residents. I got that from being a part of the Y in the early part of my career, because that's how we've always done it. We've been collaborating, we've connected, we've been, how can we accomplish these things together? And when I joined the YMCA of Central Ohio, so when I kind of went to the other side of the table, we'll say, I had the opportunity to right away join in collaborations. Up on the screen, we have 4 that we're doing right now as we speak. And in total, we have 7 Ys that exist today of our 13 because of collaborations with local communities. And that's like something I'm incredibly proud of, Ken, because of all the years that I've been doing this, proud to be able to collaborate and partner. So I'm just going to talk about 4 quick ones to give you examples. And these are 4 here in Central Ohio. There are more in the state of Ohio and more across the country. The range and scope of service of collaboration that's possible is endless. There are facilities in the Dayton area, there are facilities in Southwest all over the state that we can use as examples and templates. University models, private-public partnership models, all types of examples. I picked 4, we picked 4 today because these are here in Central Ohio, tangible, that you can walk in today and go see how they're operating. First and foremost, one example is the Liberty Township Powell YMCA. Back in 2000, the community, Liberty Township Community, Powell community came together and said, we want to be able to offer a community center. We don't want to operate it ourselves. We're looking for a partner. They asked for the Y to come to the table. They went out to their voters and actually passed a property increase. At that time, a bond levy that went alongside to help build the building. And they asked the Y to come in and operate it with them. They also, at the time, the Y brought to the table with that partnership, the Ohio State University. The Ohio State University Medical Center brought in a physical therapy center, and we built jointly together on that site. And today we continue to operate more than 20 years later, very successful, more than 10,000 members at that site. It just explodes every day with kids in the afternoon, seniors in the morning, fantastic demonstration of a community center. The taxpayers help build the facility to provide the amenity to the community. But the Y operates the facility with user fees, so there's no operating dollars past the construction of the building. It's all been user fees and member fees that help participate and make that. And the accessibility comes along with fundraising and things like that we do with the Y. 2 similar examples were Whitehall and the city of Delaware and the city. Well, I guess I'll bulk the 3 of these together. The city of Delaware, the city of Whitehall, and the city of Reynoldsburg. The city of Delaware and city of Reynoldsburg both said similar story. They wanted to operate, they wanted to have a community center to offer to their residents. In this case, they went to the voters and passed income tax increases. The income tax increase for all 3 of these actually funded, again, the capital construction of the facility. And again, in these situations, we were asked to come in and operate as a community center partner. And here's a great example, the Reynoldsburg Community Center YMCA. We went through a public process where we did a lot of the similar things that you'll see in communities all around the state of Ohio, where you do surveys, we did the focus groups, we did stakeholder meetings, public meetings, got it all down to prioritization of what the community wanted to see in this space. This particular space is really exciting as these front windows here host our teen center. The Reynoldsburg community really wanted to be able to offer access for teens. So we have an e-gaming center right inside that door where we really make sure there's an opportunity for teens to have connection, belonging, and achievement with our adults in the community that are there to help support the kids there. They also want to make sure we had programming for seniors. They want to make sure they had taken out an old swimming pool that had been there for years and years. They want to make sure there was an outdoor pool. So that space, we work with the community to make sure those things happen. Again, incredibly successful partnership with the Reynoldsburg Community Center YMCA that we're very proud to be a part of. And Whitehall and Delaware are also both very strong. The one difference I would offer with Whitehall, if you're familiar with the community of Whitehall, that an old community center is actually the old Rockwell Corporate Center. And it was kind of a dated building. And instead we went in and together and renovated that building. And it's an outstanding, beautiful space, somewhat unique, no pool, no gymnasium. Wow. Indoor turf space, indoor meeting spaces, community spaces, and we work integrated with that. That's probably our best example of working closely with the Parks and Recreation Department in the community, where Parks and Rec will come in and offer programming in the building, the Y will offer programming in the building, and we work integrated together in that space. We're working to grow that more in those other communities as well. It's a unique situation trying to work in partnership. All great examples, very proud to say that we're partnering in those communities. If you advance to the next one, I'll talk about just some of the processes that we've been through. I've been doing this for 30 plus years now, so this is where I go back and forth between my Parks and Rec days and my YMCA days, but we have the opportunity, and we have done this with different varying levels with each of those communities I just mentioned, gone through processes, right? And this is a typical process that you're going to see, whether it's a public entity or a private entity. You first usually start with developing that vision. What's the vision that you have as an entity? What does your district have as your local communities? Get community input in a number of different ways, right? So meetings, those types of things. Usually we put those lists of items that folks want in a wish list or a must-have list, depending on how you look at it. Typically we prioritize it. That list is generated through community survey, but it's narrowed down and prioritized through focus groups, stakeholder interviews, and public engagement. We've done that with communities. We facilitated that as the YMCA. I've done that in the Parks and Rec space. You can utilize different resources and partners to do that work. Then beyond the vision phase, I'm excited for putting you to work with it. There's the planning phase. Once you have that data and input from your community, you start to look at the plan. What all of you want in your space? Is it just facility? Is it going to be some land amenities? There is a Y just down the road off of 70 that's part of the Dayton system where they built a large community outdoor pool center, kind of a small water park type complex. And they built it alongside of the Y so that they asked the Y to partner and operate the pool for them in the community. So just imagine what the community is looking for. And then once you have that plan, you look for locations and what type of location needs the best. You begin to use your information to design your program layout, because obviously your space needs to meet what program that you're looking for. You start to look at partners. What are you looking? Who else do you want to be a part of that? There's a number of Ys in the country or in the state even that are connected to school buildings. There's a Y right down the street, right down the road again. That you have the high school gymnasium, the swimming pool, and then the community center YMCA, and then the senior center, right? So that you have access and connectivity to those resources for all of the partners. You also have a number of examples, including our Reynoldsburg example I showed you a minute ago. We partner with local health centers, and you have interconnectivity with that health center, whether it's physical therapy or other types of services that health partner brings to the table. We have partnerships already with Ohio Health and Mount Carmel and Ohio State that happen inside of our Ys in terms of programming, and we also have physical partnerships with Ohio State and Ohio Health. And then you get into planning, facility and selecting and really planning out those operations and planning how the funding model is going to happen, right? So there's the capital aspect of it, there's the operating aspect, and then there's the long-term CapEx. How do you do that? Again, we have done that role. We have played this role as a facilitator and the help along the way, working with different partners. For example, in Reynoldsburg, there was one example where we did that. And then after the planning phase, you really start to get into the construction phase. And that's where obviously you're dealing with the design and engineering, construction, project management, owner's representation, and commissioning of the building. Those services, again, we have provided them, we have offered them as or brought in partners to help facilitate them as well. And then finally, just to finish it up, is the operation, right? And in each of our cases, we have operating agreements or partner agreements. I think that one of the keys to success in this is those agreements, making sure upfront that there's a clear understanding of expectations. So not only do I believe in agreements, but I believe in the language behind the agreement. What is going, when you write that agreement, a lot of the folks that write it aren't going to be around 10, 20 years from now. So putting down on paper what was the intent of the agreement and the pieces and parts of the agreement. So working together to really get through that. How do the community stay involved in the leadership of that? At each one of our facilities, we have advisory committee members made up of local community leaders. So in Delaware, for example, the Parks and Rec Department, the City Council, and the Mayor's Office all have a representative on our advisory committee to help lead that line. The same thing at the Liberty Township facility at Reynoldsburg as well. Constant communication, the communication systems back and forth, making sure monthly, quarterly, annual updates for the community, the residents, and the folks who are responsible for that space. And then what other collaborations, as I mentioned, working together with different entities in the community, whether it's school systems, senior centers, or parks and recreation departments, so that make sure that the facility is a truly collaborative. So these are all opportunities that the YMCA of Central Ohio can bring to communities that we partner and when we partner. We've had tremendous success in Central Ohio doing that. Tons of examples around the country, and we'd love to be able to work with y'all in those spaces. Thanks.
Yeah, so while you're transitioning, let's just note for the record, Mr. Elliott has joined us 6:33 virtually, so that has been noted in the record.
Last piece we have is just what a tentative timeline would look like. We go to the next slide.
There we go.
Okay. So we've mapped out what this timeline would look like, along with what Tony just presented in terms of each one of the phases. So if we left here today and at some point you all said, yes, we want to move forward, what this will look like in terms of next steps, right? And to get into that visioning process. One of the most important aspects around the visioning process is the feasibility study. Coming into the meeting, I had the opportunity to talk to 3 different companies on their ability to be able to turn around a feasibility study. And I believe on one of the tours, somebody had mentioned October, maybe as the time period where you need to report back to the governing entities about what next steps would be and stuff like that. And so of those organizations that I talked with, one of them did indicate that they could turn around a feasibility study as well as include a market study. The 2 different components of that feasibility study is obviously the community's appetite for this type of project and their willingness to be able to support that. A market study would be a little bit different in terms of allowing us to understand how many individuals in this market area would also pay to be members of that facility or pay to do the programs in that facility as well. So that gives us a chance to understand what could be the sustainability of a building in terms of how the size we build it, the amenities could be and everything like that. That could be done prior to being able to get the results back prior to October, as long as we move sometime during the month of June on that. The price tag, just estimated range on that, is probably somewhere between $25,000 to $30,000. Okay, that would take us again in a tentative timeline. That takes us up to this October-November timeframe, and getting into the planning process that Tony talked about. That planning process, it says there's a year on here. It really leads up into if whatever time period, if you are going in front of voters to get some support. So I threw out 12 months that can fall 2026. It could easily be extended or even shortened just based on if you're going in front of voters at some point, what that timeline could be. The biggest estimate after that though, is that window from, let's say you get public support and you're ready to begin, all the way through construction and opening of the facility. That is about a 2-year process, 10 to 12 months in terms of design engineering, and then 12 to 14 months in terms of construction. Again, just estimate about work in the field. That's something that. So lots of information. I know I'll pause there. I'm going to bring Tony back up for any questions that you all might have, or anything in the agenda that we left out that we're hoping that we can talk about.
Yeah. Oh, so I was wondering, when you've been involved in the beginning with the, the visioning process and the feasibility study, has that translated to success in terms, like when you have to go to a vote to get funding? I mean, have you typically been able to get the voters to approve the money?
So, Tony may have a little bit more history than I do. However, I do know in the Reynoldsburg model, we were a part of the conversation at the very beginning. That it was initiated that the Y and the city of Reynoldsburg would explore the idea of the community center together. And so we helped support them along those ways. And then once it got approved, then that agreement went from exploring to a new agreement that said the Y and the city of Reynoldsburg will work together to bring a community center to this facility. So again, we supported them along that way. However, the city of Reynoldsburg had their own owner's rep. They had control of the construction. We offered some support, our own ideas, but they were really wanting to call the shots in that. I don't know about Whitehall and Delaware. Liberty was for both of our maps.
Yeah, I would just say that we were involved in the beginning stages with all of them, and I want to make sure I understand your question correctly. It sounds to me like you're asking two separate things. You're asking, is being involved in the vision process helpful to get a vote passed?
Yeah.
And also hear you say is if the YMCA was involved in the vision process. So there's two separate questions.
No, it's really more is, having this vision process, does that typically, in your experience, result in, getting it approved at the ballot? Have you had instances where it hasn't?
I definitely would say yes, because I think that you have to be in concert with the voters, what the voters are looking for and what the priorities are, right? And having the voters involved in that process is key. I will tell you that so I'm gonna go hybrid here under Parks and Rec, and I've been involved in watch in my career, levies that didn't pass, so tax steps that didn't pass because the community wasn't ready at the time. I've been involved in ones that are ones that there was a disconnect between what the group that was asking and the community was. I won't name the community, but I know one community where it was really grandiose. I'll just make up numbers. We're gonna build a really large 100,000 square foot facility, and it's gonna cost millions of dollars, and it's gonna cost X amount to operate, and so we need you to pay this much in income tax. And the community was like, whoa, that is way more than we're ready, and it went down hard. So I think involving the community at the beginning, having that vision session, absolutely critical. The second thing I just want to add is the Reynoldsburg situation. They had tried in the community twice before to get an issue passed, and they did not make it. I wasn't there involved in the voting at the time. I was actually in Parks and Rec when it actually passed. But what I have been told is what really caught the Reynoldsburg voters when the time it did pass was the idea of the collaboration. The idea, the cost savings of just paying for the capital and not paying for the operating. And I've also heard the same thing, and that is the same case in Delaware. And again, obviously you're going to reach out to those folks and talk to them. But the idea that there was no income tax dollars used to operate in both of those cases, those were income tax situations versus property. But there was no tax dollars used to operate the facility. And only user fees are utilized. That was something that really struck those voters as important.
A question. Yep.
Sure.
Thank you. So in your presentation, you talked about a breadth of services that the YMCA offers. I guess when I was thinking about a recreation center, I wasn't thinking about it having a lot of the things that are included currently in your model. So how does that play into any decisions we might make as a board representing our community? You know, like daycare services. I mean, there were just, and I'm certain that we didn't touch on all of them, but it just seemed very broad. And I didn't know how that played into a relationship with the YMCA as it relates to what our needs might be in our community.
Yeah, so when we partner with communities, we work based on what the community is looking to offer. And to be clear, what Gary is speaking to was our total breadth of all the work that we do in Central Ohio. The Reynoldsburg Community Center doesn't have a child care space in it. It has a child watch space. So when your family comes and you want you want a young person to have a safe place to go while you're maybe taking a class or a program, we have a space like that at the Reynoldsburg space. We do have a teen center space there that is, obviously a little bit different. But each center we operate is with the vision process designed based on community needs, with the idea that it has to be able to operate. Right, that's actually critically important to the business model of the board. So yeah, the childcare spaces, some of the social service work we do, that's the breadth of programming that Central Ohio offers. Maybe not per se in a particular space. It's based on the community and what we're offering. In some communities, we have strong preschool and early learning. In some communities, that's not what they're looking for.
I would also just add, the feasibility study will also help play out into what amenities should be a part of that community center. So there'll be a list of questions on there on what these community residents want, and that's how it should be built.
So I have one comment to the board. I mean, one of the things that I found very helpful in your conversation today related to the services being provided to those who might not necessarily be able to afford it, particularly given our community. I think that would be very appealing to our demographic here because yes, we have a lot of young families, but we also have individuals that are on a fixed income and might not see this as an advantage to them. But if we are able to offer them assistance in some way, as some of the things that you suggested, I could see that as being very appealing to them. So that's just a comment that I wanted to make after hearing your presentation.
Can I say something to that?
Yeah, sure, of course.
So in each of the communities that we work in the examples that we showed on the board there, we came to the table as a partner. We helped raise dollars to help build the facilities. And in a lot of the cases, in all four of those cases, the local government paid to construct the facility. We raised dollars from the private sector, from philanthropy, to do the FF&E. So the internal work, so the equipment, whatever needed to start up the building in terms of operating. When it comes to operating annually every year, we first start with a pricing model that meets the community's needs. So we look at each community based on that particular community. It has to, again, operate as a business. It has to pay the bills, but we do that. And then on the second thing that we do, we never turn anyone away. And we go out and raise money privately. This year we raised $1.2 million. To make sure that nobody is turned away from a week of camp, a basketball program, or a family membership. We always have an opportunity for that type of financial assistance.
Yeah.
I had another question. You had mentioned how, I think it was the Liberty Township Y. You also worked with OSU. I mean, is in trying to come up with those types of partnerships, is that something that, the Y helps, move forward? Because I imagine you all have more relationships on that front than we do. And I was just wondering, who takes the initiative on that?
We would definitely bring it. In fact, we would bring some opportunities and ideas to the table in initial conversations. We've been working with our partners at Ohio Health, Ohio State, Mount Carmel to talk about collaboration every day. It's one of the Gary's functions that he works on. And how does that best serve each community? We also, just from the perspective of, we'll bring a menu of options, but we'll then also bring back behind that the agreements. Right, and the different pieces and parts. And we've been doing these healthcare partnerships, we've been doing for over 30 years now. So we've learned a lot. We've got some things that work really well, and we've got some things that we thought would work well, but we, showed to you how we can maybe do it better. So we have some good experiences too, and the same with the healthcare partners that we work with. They've learned a lot as well along the way.
Oh, and sorry, I had one other question. So with your 4 different phases that you had up there, so it's my understanding that, you could be engaged for any one singular part of it, not necessarily, the whole thing. Is that how it works?
Yeah, I would say this. I mean, we would normally not be involved in a vision process or construction process if we weren't going to be a partner in the operation.
Okay.
If that makes sense. We're not a construction design firm by trade, right? We
Mhm.
build community centers that serve the community. We build community spaces and operate them.
Okay. Thank you. That's very helpful.
The piece that I would offer is that we have also been asked to come in and operate the existing facilities, right? So that's the different phases, I guess you could check out.
I was just going to ask Greg, did you have any questions?
No, this is apologies for missing the first half of the meeting. The rain changed around some schedules for me, so but I look forward to reviewing the presentation and potentially reaching out and asking questions here in the future for sure. But thank you.
Yeah, so maybe if I could ask just one question. So I know I think you've indicated some communities maybe it's premature, when you've worked with the community, maybe it doesn't necessarily get across the line, in terms of funding for a facility. The Sunbury Big Walnut area is an example of that. Whatever it was 15 years or so ago, there was an attempt to go out and establish a community center. So I'm not necessarily asking about that, but I know you said that Sunbury or the Big Walnut area has been on your radar. Can you just say a little bit more about why it's jumped back onto the radar from the YMCA's perspective?
Sure. I think there's a couple of pieces and parts. Obviously, the growth in Delaware County has been explosive, right? The fastest, largest growing county in the state. So the density of population. There's a business model, right? So first and foremost, we're about impact and mission. Absolutely. But there's also a business model that you have to be able to afford to operate. And I've had pretty much once a year, I'll get a call from a community that says, hey, we'd love you to bring a Y here. I would love to bring a Y, but we have to have a certain number of rooftops to be able to make the business work so that we can do it without the tax subsidy and an annual operating basis. So we're now approaching that density, or we can start to look at that forecast in this region to be able to have enough rooftops to make that work from a business standpoint. So it's the mission impact, the growth in this county, and wanting to be able to be a part of it. We get a lot of asks from our folks to, we're in the school age program, to, when's the Y gonna come here? Oh, I wish we had a Y. We get that a lot. But it gets to a point where there also has to be the business side of it to work. And it's also not just the operating at the end of the day, but there also has to be a partner who's interested in the capital. At the end, I hate to be that way in terms of, it sounds cold, but it costs a lot of money to build these buildings and these operations, and these it's not done through fundraising anymore, unless you're the Ohio State University.
I do have a question based on that response there. So you talked about rooftops. When we're looking, what is that threshold of rooftops for roughly for a facility that would make sense in a community? I feel like I can see you smiling, but
Because I'm trying to remember the number. It's actually a math formula. I don't remember the number off the top of my head. I was looking at Gary to see if you remembered it. Yeah. It's a 15-minute service area, so 15-minute drive time. 12 minute drive time. So it's the number of rooftops in that 12-minute drive time, and then estimating a percentage of those folks who actually use your service, right? Because it's not the total. So, for example, I'll give you Reynoldsburg is 40,000, population 40,000, right? And we serve about, what did we say? Are we at 15% of the population there? I think we're about 15% of the population in Reynoldsburg are members of our Y, which is pretty amazing. So most community centers will average 8 to 10% of population, because you figure it's not for everyone, right? But in terms of seniors, in terms of young people, families, so about 15% of the Reynoldsburg community belongs to that Y. If you can get to 10%, that economic number works at 40,000. I'm drawing a blank on what the minimum population number is. My apologies. We could look that up, but we would be looking at the region. And obviously the region is, that's or more rooftops.
Yeah, but Greg, I'd also add the size of the facility can align with the number of households that are in that target area. So Reynoldsburg is a 58,000 square foot facility, right, with more population. If there's not going to be that much population, then maybe you don't build a 58,000 square foot. So maybe you build a 40,000 square foot, and maybe the other phases come as the community continues to grow.
Yeah, I was going to assume that as well, right? That it's part of the size of the facility is going to be determined by the expected usage as well, right? And some of the amenities, but like you said, that's all done during the feasibility study. So I understand.
The only negative to come back is everybody says we need an 8-lane lap pool and 2 gymnasiums.
Right.
Now you have a 40,000 square foot facility, you haven't added anything else. So.
Understand.
Yeah. So, thank you very much. We've got a little other business we'll need to cover tonight. So we appreciate your time, and we'll be back in touch. Great.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
All right, well, the next item on the agenda is unfinished business. So I think for me, I just have, we're still working on insurance. We did get one quote. Greg, I think between you and I, we can, get the paperwork we need to get the other quote, and then, just kind of compare and see which is the best for our board. And then I also wanted to just give everyone, just remind everybody about the virtual meeting policy that we approved. It does require that notice be provided to the chair 48 hours before the meeting if you intend to attend virtually. If it's less than 48 hours, the policy says that you can't attend virtually unless there's an emergency, and emergency is pretty narrowly defined. So if everybody can just remember to keep in mind that 48-hour time period, and just, if you think you might need to do that, just provide that notice so we make sure we're in compliance with the policy.
And we will add that Greg did provide that notice.
Yeah,
so.
I got notice of that. So first round, we got it right. So the next, does anybody else have any unfinished business to bring up?
I'm still working on this is on me, the setting up our bank account. It's on me to finish the paperwork, but it's unfinished at this point. It'll be done by our next meeting.
Anyone else? Okay, now we're on to new business. So resolution number 2025-09 is a resolution adopting a procurement policy. Mr. Engel, would you be able to just kind of give us a quick overview of that policy?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. The policy that you have in front of you is very similar to the policy we briefly brought up at the last meeting. The only real revisions between that example template policy and what is being proposed for the board to adopt today is that template policy had in consideration a park executive director making most of the expenditure authorizations. In this policy that we have before the board for its consideration, the expenditures would be with the board chair with the approval of the board treasurer, and in some instances by a majority vote of the board as well. So just going quickly through the proposed procurement policy, it essentially sets up more rigorous procurement procedures as the dollar figure on the type of service or public improvement that is trying to be purchased. So it would start section 1 if there's an expenditure up to $5,000. And as long as there's a purchase order for an expenditure over $1,000, that approval could be made by the board chair and the board treasurer, as long as the there's an appropriation in the board's budget for the year, and the appropriation is necessary for all of the expenditures that are talked about in the procurement policy. When you get a little bit in a higher dollar threshold, section 2, between 5,000 and 25,000, this needs a majority vote of the board, and it would require 2 written quotations in particular. And then when you're talking about in section 3, the threshold of $25,000 up to 75,000 adjusted 3% annually for inflation. So that's a figure that's annually calculated by the Department of Commerce, and is tied to the revised code. And that allows for a predictable inflation adjustment so that the board isn't necessarily capped at a ceiling there, but that can slowly grow to be more accommodating. That would require a majority vote of the board for such an expenditure, and it would require what we could say is a request for qualifications, not a full-blown request for proposals with bid specifications, but some parameters around that expenditure, and it would require 3 written quotations. All of those, section 2 to section 3, so expenditures between 5,000 to 75,000. If you look at section 4, some of the multiple quotation requirements can be waived for certain exceptions that are discussed in section 7, which we'll get to in a second. And then starting in section 5, if the board were to expend more than $75,000 of that inflation adjusted threshold, it would require a more formal bid process, which is typical of most public entities. It would require a majority vote of the board. It would require plans and specifications and forms of bid to be provided. It would require 30 days notice, advertisement of the proposed bid, and then the board would have the option to select the lowest and best qualified bidder of the bids that come in based on the specifications that the board issued. Section 6 provides flexibility to the board, so you're not handcuffed to accept the lowest and best qualified bid. You can reject any bid, go back out to bid. If you're unsatisfied with the results, you get back. But the intention of section 5 and having a lowest and best qualified bidder standard for those larger expenditures is to make sure that since you're a public entity, that any vendor has a qualified opportunity to potentially be selected based on arguably providing the best service for the lowest cost. And then section 7 is a list of certain exceptions. These apply also to many public entities. So the state has purchasing pools where they've pre-negotiated favorable contract terms at stated prices. The policy would allow the board to enter into service agreements with any of those entities that have already entered in those agreements with the state or negotiated them with the state. If the board wanted to purchase services from any governmental body, including Sunbury, Galena, Berkshire, you'd be able to waive the formal bid criteria. And if there were an emergency, if something that you're trying to acquire isn't capable of being competitively bid, professional services would also fall into this category. So as the board is potentially considering hiring a consultant to do feasibility and market studies, section 7 would allow that to be an exception to going through a formal bid process. But I would recommend that if the board has the time and does adopt this policy, that there still be some kind of at least qualifications put in place for selection of the consultant. But section 7 allows the board flexibility in those purchases. And then section 8, just to round out, it just says that if there's an exception that's used for the procurement policy, it needs to be approved by board resolution. So that, in a nutshell, is what the procurement policy you have before you states. Happy to take any questions regarding the policy or anything related to it.
Any questions?
Can I just ask, so Mike, thank you for that. So as I listen to that and I think about maybe the next action of this board, which is to look for some professional services to support the needs assessment and a market analysis, which will likely be, in a number that's somewhere between the $25,000 and $75,000 range. So just to be clear, it sounds like one option is we could waive, I guess, that section in terms of having to establish the informal specifications and go straight to a selection of professional services. Although the advice would be identify at least the criteria on which we'll make that decision, but not through a competitive bidding process, but through maybe some agreement on the scope of services to be provided and the basis on which the contractor will be selected.
So for that $25,000 to $75,000 threshold, section 4 allows the waiver of requiring 3 written quotations. You would likely want to have informal specifications because I don't know that any consultant would really be able to provide you services if they didn't know what you were requesting service for. And there's the majority vote of the board. It's really when you get into that above $75,000 threshold that you, especially for like professional services, things that are can be arguably more discretionary or come with more discretion in the selection, that it allows for waiver of that more formal bid process.
So for example, for like I'm sorry, you can go ahead, Mr. Elliott.
Thank you. Real quick question is, where can we find the documentation or the process for bidding once we hit the certain thresholds? Is there, I'm assuming there's a written process somewhere. I want to make sure that we're all familiar with it.
There is a statutory process outlined in the revised code for state agencies. There's also some guidance in the revised code for county related purchases, but you could also look to, say, the city of Sunbury, the village of Galena's forms and bid specifications as templates to use for your own purposes. So I don't think that quite answered your question, but
it does. So basically what you're saying is, if we followed, I guess, to be compliant, if we followed Sunbury's, as an example, procurement processes for bidding, we would be compliant with the regulations necessary to, go through the bid process. Okay.
And so that the recommendation is then that we do that for this market study analysis.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well,
Kind of qualifications for what you would like to see in a vendor, but not necessarily have to go through a formal request for proposal process that would require 30-day notice and having sealed bids and, not being able to review my criteria until a certain time point, and then having to grade the applicants based on set criteria, and then having to go with the lowest and best bidder.
so another question then, so just hearing that, I feel like we would need someone who is well-versed in procurement to run an RFP process. Who would we have access to, again, Village of Galena, City of Sunbury, or Berkshire's procurement resources to help us with running that RFP process? Or would we need to have our own, consultant who is specialized in running RFPs and bid processes do that for us?
So one of my previous roles, I actually was the head of procurement for the Department of Transportation in Colorado and the city of Englewood, so I'd be happy to carry that forward.
Perfect. Because I've never run an RFP. I've been a part of a lot of RFPs, but I've never run one. So I hear that and I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And I don't know if I'm glad you
Happy
have
to help in that regard.
Yeah, perfect.
Any other questions?
I'll just add that and I think Administrator Hennessy would be able to potentially echo. I think all of the communities that are supporting you, they have to some degree staff that are familiar with local procurement procedures. And if there's any questions about, how to format something, or if there's a template for, if you do want to do a more formal proposal process, grading criteria on what you might want to look at for a particular service. I'm sure there are plenty of samples, templates that could be provided to help support the board. And if much further down the road, we're talking beyond market and feasibility studies, if the board does want to actually go into the procurement process for a construction services for a facility, and then there are also consultants. My firm, for example, we have a practice group that they specialize in construction consulting for public entities, and the legal negotiating and contracting around all of that, that there are people that you can hire at that point if it's for a multi-million-dollar purchase, for example.
Any further questions? Make a motion to approve the procurement policy.
I'll second.
All right, Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Sabata,
Yes.
Mr. Muzakio. Yes. Ms. Greiger,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott.
Yes.
5 yeas, motion approved.
The next item on the agenda is the community needs assessment and market analysis, which I think got folded in a little bit into the discussion of the procurement policy.
Which is great.
Is there further discussion to be had on that? It seems like that is the direction that we're heading, and we, it looks like we should be looking to start the process to put out whatever it is we need to put out to start moving forward to get somebody who can do that for us.
Yeah, so what I was going to suggest is, and that's why I want to make sure that we understood the procurement policy, and thank you, Ms. Sabata, for offering your technical expertise. What I might suggest here is perhaps I could work with the member. We could draft up a set of qualifications, the basis on which, what it is that we're looking for, the basis on which we may make a selection, and be able to bring back to this group at its next meeting something to react to. That doesn't say it necessarily mean it needs to be the final word, but it could at least get the conversation started about how to go out and begin to procure those services. So if that's an acceptable strategy, we can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Have we asked, so I was gonna reach out to the Y for who they use as consultants. Was there any indication on who they used, or, and apologies, I know I missed the first 30 minutes, so did they indicate on who they use for consultants, or did they just, I know they mentioned feasibility study, but they didn't say who they used necessarily?
Yeah, in their remarks, they did not call out any particular firm. In some conversations I've had with them, they certainly said they would make available to us, if we're interested, the types of firms that they work with. So I would think that would be at least a group we'll reach out to, but it wouldn't be our exclusive list.
Okay.
Are we ready to move on to the next item on the agenda? All right, we'll move on. It's we have information it's from Pinnacle Indoor Sports and the sports facilities companies that Mr. Elliott was able to provide.
Yeah, so I just included in the packet. I just want to make sure that you've got a full set of the documents. We had sent out a digital version. Just want to make sure that it's officially in front of you in a hard copy version. So we'll look to those as well to help us in terms of shaping the specifications. If they're interested in submitting proposals, we'll certainly share this information with them, or share whatever we end up with in terms of our qualifications, share it with these groups and encourage them to bid on that if that's what they want to do. So yeah, this is mostly meant to be informational. The other thing, if I could add from an informational perspective, is that I think in our very first meeting, the the exploratory committee representatives who came up to the group to speak in front of, or to speak to the group, had indicated that at some point, we may be seeking some additional funds to do something. I think now that we're beginning to get a sense of what that could look like, this is an example where it is likely we will need to go back to the jurisdictions and ask for some additional support. So I was just simply going to add, now might be a good time for you to find a way to report back to your, legislative authorities, just what's going on, give them at least an understanding of kind of where the JRD is and, what the expectations might be. We don't know the number at this point, but we certainly know that it's likely to be something, some form of a request. So that point, and then the other point I wanted to make is that thank you to the former JRD members who are participating in the phone calls, just to give you their perspective. We did a phone call earlier this week on Tuesday night. We've got another one scheduled for next Tuesday night. So, think that that's good opportunity. If you want more details about the Tuesday night one, if you're not on that call yet, I can send out the details on that to whomever. So anyway, yeah, those are underway. So appreciate people's willingness to jump on those calls.
Would you send mine again since
I will. That's
email
right.
is being weird? Thank you.
I will send that again. That's
Okay.
great. Thank you. Those were the updates I had.
Oh, does anybody have any other information to share? All right, I don't think I was gonna provide an opportunity for any public comment, if anybody had any comments.
One.
You have comment?
You need to go.
Yeah, why don't you come up? Yeah, if you could come up, state your name. Generally, we give you 3 minutes.
Nobody else down top.
Yes.
Believe it or not, I'm in Galena, Harlem Township. So some of you might have received an email that I sent to you because I sent it through the mayor. And he forwarded it on to you guys. Pretty much what they said, why, is pretty much what I've already probably given you guys an idea of. Some of you might even not be, but basically I used ChatGPT to give me the information that you guys are looking for. The reason I say this, my son has been traveling for lacrosse for the last 3 years. And I've been to numerous parks and I've seen what is happening. And I see that the communities are making money off this. And I feel like that's something that as we grow, that if I had money, I would have done it. And I think this is knowing what you guys are doing now. Unfortunately, it's only 3 of the townships involved. I guess I don't know if the other townships didn't want to get involved, which I feel bad of, but I always had an idea that all Big Walnut school townships involved would be ideal to set up a recreation department. But that's not the case. You guys got it going on. But again, if any of your kids ever played travel anything, you would see the parks, especially with baseball, lacrosse, soccer. There is money to be made, and I would hate for us not to be able to make that. And that's really about it. Who got my email, I guess is my question. I don't remember who would be sent to.
I think I received it.
And he forwarded it on to. I don't know if Tyler, if you were one of them.
I haven't seen anything yet.
It might have also gone to the vice chair.
I thought it was 2 or 3 of you guys.
Yeah, I think
So-
it went to me and maybe the vice chair.
Gotcha. And I guess some of the questions I have when these guys are talking and you guys are talking is, were other townships involved in this? Did they have a chance to throw their hat into this or not?
I think that's a question you can ask, Mr. St. John was part of.
And this is it's a public comment.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It's not really a forum to take questions.
Oh.
But yeah, we were, we were the appointed members of the JRD, that was formed, before we were
Well, I
appointed.
guess I got other questions, so I don't know who should I question these to, or is that something I can bring up here now, or?
Well, why don't you put the questions on the table so at least we know what they are and then somebody can follow up with you.
You guys are asking about who did what, use what. Do you ever look at Big Walnut, who did they use for feasibility studies? Because they just got done with the school, how many years ago? What did they use for their decision on rec? Even though it's more sports than rec. saves a little bit of money possibly, I don't know, will they partner with us or not? I guess the other thing would be is, you guys are the rec committee, but why not put a board, like a actual rec department? And I think it's probably it's more financial. Put a department together with that and have them do the work that the wise one would do, but bring in those type of specialty people. And then it sounds like you guys might have visited some of the wise. I sent on my email, I sent 2 links. One was Grand Parks out of Indiana. That facility is amazing. They do have, not really a rec center, but they do have a building that people can come in and work out. Not crazy workout, like the actual community center. It doesn't mean you can't take that building and put a community center and surround it with all the parks of baseball, football, soccer, lacrosse. And then there's also one, so it's out of South Carolina. I've been there, my sister lives in an area, the neighborhood actually pays for that park. And it's a link that I sent to you. So, I thought that was an idea.
Is it Grand Park, you said?
Was that
Grand Park?
Grand Park out of Indiana? It's Westfield, Indiana.
Okay.
And then the other one, I can't remember the name of it, in South Carolina. It's out of Lake Riley, South Carolina. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your.
Thank you.
Hey, for a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Greg?
I'm sorry.
Second.
I thought she made a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I did forget to mention the next meeting has been scheduled for June 5th, 2025 at 6 p.m. I'm sorry. So can we go ahead and do the roll call?
Yeah, I just want to make sure. So who was the second on that? Is it Mr. Elliott? Or,
I'll second it.
all right. Ms. Sabata,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott,
Yes.
Ms. Greiger,
Yes.
Mr. Muzakio,
Yes.
Ms. Watson.
Yes.
5 yeas, motion approved. We are adjourned.